No,
No, you shouldn't.
shouldn't do that.
You are live.
Welcome to the Curriculum Committee. Today is May 27th, and it is now 5:33. I'm Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, the chair of the Curriculum Committee. We are going to be listening to a report from the literary coaches of our middle schools. And Rob, would you take this away?
Sure. So thank you, Mary Ellen. So tonight we have a plethora of people that have joined the committee, and through the process, we'll talk about the process that we've engaged in over the last 4 months as we look to select a new literacy resource for our middle school and high schools. With me today, I have Marianne Shepard, Allison Brady Johnson, Danny Brown, Stacy Bergen, Caitlin Moffett, Natalie Elwinger, and Tony Frioli. We also have with us Meredith Burdick from TNTP, who has been a partner with us through this process. So I'm not going to take too much time. We'll get started right away. Right? So the agenda for tonight is just we're going to provide updates on the K-12 literacy work that we've been working on. And we are going to talk about the 612 curriculum selection process and the outcomes, because I think that that is really something that we are excited about, is that our middle school and our high school literacy ELA teachers have and coaches have selected a new resource, hopefully for next year. And then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have. All right. You can go on to the next slide. So we started this work back in the fall.
I don't see any slide. Did you say you started slides?
Yes, you don't see the slides?
No, there's nothing on my screen.
Does everyone else see the slides?
Okay.
Okay, can we exit and try again? Okay, now there's no slides, Mary Ellen.
I see no slides.
Okay, now we're going to share the slides. Do you see the slides now?
I see the slides.
Wonderful. And
Thank you
so
very much.
we had a full committee that engaged in the process of creating our pre-K 12 literacy vision and our core values. And this is the vision and core values is what is driving everything that we do as an organization. And it is what really kicked off our work in secondary schools to select a new literacy resource, and in our elementary schools to update and tweak what we have to meet this literacy vision. Right. All right, Meredith, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rob. It's nice to see everyone tonight. Thanks for having me. We're really excited to summarize, reflect on the process that we've worked alongside the team on over the last few months. I thought it would be important to just ground us in where we've been and where we're going. We, in phase 2, which is this investigate and select, once the team established their vision, we supported the team in determining what the curriculum selection process would look like, the new material selection process would look like, and also built knowledge with the team around key best practices for literacy instruction, and really getting a strong sense of the current state of instruction for kids across the district. In the investigate and select process, we used all of that knowledge to develop a set of criteria that we would use to examine what curricular resources were available and whittle that down to a short list that then we could go ahead and pilot. And the team has been working incredibly hard over the last couple of months to put together a very comprehensive piloting process that we're excited to share with you today, both the process and the outcomes. And so it's hot off the press, and we're excited excited to share it with you. From there, we'll talk about launching and implementing and how we monitor once we've selected those materials. But the bulk of our time tonight will be spent on the phase that we just completed, investigating and selecting. Next slide. So just to refresh on the roadmap here, we've been engaging with a committee since late February. That's when the selection committee sessions began. We trained a group of piloting teachers at the end of March, and then we ran a pilot from April to May 16th. That involved piloting 2 sets of middle school materials and 2 sets of high school materials, which Danny and the team will go into some details about that. From there, we spent time in classrooms observing the pilot, gathering quite a bit of data. And we think of data, we think about student experience data, teacher experience data, the observation data, really looking at to what extent do each of these curricular resources meet the goals that we set out at the beginning of the process and the parameters. So we also did focus groups. So some data we can collect by observation and by report, and then others we like to dig in more and be able to ask follow-up questions. So we also did focus groups with teachers and students. Last week, we had our consensus meeting, and during that consensus meeting, we brought all the data together with the group in order to make a decision. The selection committee was diverse. We want to ensure that there are folks involved across the vertical spine, which we consider to be all the different stakeholders that are touched by the work. And so you'll see here the full list of folks that were participating.
Wow.
We include, these are the parameters. So at the beginning of the process, we want to ensure that we have a decision-making framework that we use when we're looking. There are lots of different curriculum resources out there on the market right now. And so it's really important that we are crystal clear on what are our parameters as they match up with the vision that we set. So these are the parameters that were set by the team. We were looking for curriculum for 6-8 and 9-12. It didn't need to be from the same publisher. We realized that the needs of the middle schools and the high schools were unique and had some similarities and differences, and didn't want to limit ourselves in that way. We have, we want to make sure they're new, they're published in the last 5 years, that they're feasible financially, and that they can be sustained over time. Different curriculum resources have all different price points. That the evidence-based practices that support grade level text complexity with the Connecticut standards alignment were present and could be well aligned. We also wanted to make sure that it had high usability and had adaptations for specific pathways within the district, specific programs within the district, and that it was inclusive to all types of learners, kids accessing the program from a variety of vantage points. So those are the original parameters. And then from there, the selection committee went even further to say, at the middle school level, what are the priorities? And at the high school level, what are they? And at this point, I don't know, Danny, if you want to talk about any of the nuance between the two, but I thought it was important that we highlight, you can see here, different language, similar goals, but I didn't know, Danny, if you wanted to layer anything in here.
No, this came from a collection of information that we collected from the students and from our teachers, because we wanted to make sure that their voices were heard in that. And so these were the guiding priorities that we used as we got to consensus around determining which curriculum we were going to move forward with. So this came from the voice of teachers, and then it was decided on the level of impact that they saw in the curriculum that we piloted as to how effective they were for meeting these priorities.
Great. So the overarching goal of the process, I think it's worth being restated. We wanted to select materials that best meets the needs of all students at Norwalk Public Schools. And it's really important that we facilitate a transparent process when we do this. As I hope you hear through all of the process steps that we took, we spent a great deal of time ensuring that we engaged, consulted, and gathered feedback from stakeholders through every stage of the process and from a variety of stakeholders. Not that we want both input and feedback throughout the process. And then we use that data and invited literacy teachers to the table to engage in the pilot and to engage in the consensus process. So overall, knowing that we had a data-informed, stakeholder-driven process.
Meredith, can I also just add in here that data went to you guys and it didn't come to the central office team?
Good point.
Because we wanted to make sure that it was blind data for all of us, and our coaches will talk a little bit more about this later, but all of that information was collected and analyzed by TNTP, and we saw it live at the same time as the teachers and coaches as a way to maintain that role outside of the decision making and let it really be coming from the voice of staff.
Great point. So as I mentioned, we did 6 weeks of piloting and collecting data. And what the ultimate goal here is to build consensus. And what we did with all of the data was create a set of an analysis for the team so that when everybody came together for that consensus meeting, we wanted to make sure that we had analyzed the data in a digestible format that the team could engage with, and that teachers and school leaders could use it to build consensus. And so we looked at the field testing data, we looked at all of the stakeholder engagement data, and brought that together for the team to analyze. We had 2 programs that were piloted in the middle school, Study Sync and EL Education, and then 2 programs piloted at the high school, Study Sync and Odell Education. And this is a little snapshot of the data that was collected through the process.
Yep. And I'm going to pass this off to our coaches to discuss how this part of the process went.
Great.
Hi, Natalie Elwanger. I'm literacy coach over at Nathan Hale Middle School. Nice to see you, Mary Ellen.
Oh, I'm wishing I had seen this before I had the meeting, that Nathan Hale meeting, but that's great.
Yes, great to see you. So during our pilot process, there was a collection of data, not only for how teachers were feeling about the curriculum, but also students. The top layer shows the lens through the middle school, and the bottom layer shows the high school. So each week, every teacher that was piloting was asked to complete a Google form survey that just asked questions on how they engaged, how students engaged with the learning. So there were 63 surveys submitted from middle school piloting teachers. The same thing at the high school, there were 59 surveys. Additionally, outside of those surveys, there were focus groups where teachers sat in, and it was only teachers, even literacy coaches. I was not able to participate in that meeting, but TNTP came and was able to ask questions of the teachers of how their piloting process, what the pros and the cons felt from both curriculums, or if some teachers piloted one curriculum, some schools piloted one curriculum only, some schools piloted both. At Nathan Hale, we had 8th grade piloting one and 6th grade piloting another. So we were able to really get a feel for how each curriculum would work for our school and for our students. So the focus groups where teachers were able to speak freely and share their experience. Additionally, there was a student focus group, which I was able to participate in, and that was amazing because the kids started with this perception of how they were going to react to the curriculum and say, schoolwork is never any good. They still don't like this new program. But once we started digging and asking them, or TNTP asked them more specific questions about how they felt about the curriculum, the kids did start to really light up and explain some of the things that they've enjoyed over the piloting experience. So there were 6 different sessions of student focus groups for the middle school and 3 sessions of focus groups for the high school. So all throughout the process, there was great student voice and teacher voice heard. What's not listed here is even the continuous surveys that happened every time a coach walked into a piloting classroom or a school administrator did. We were able to ask ourselves how students were engaged with the text, if they had opportunities for critical thinking, if they were engaging in discourse with another student, and just to provide some commentary on how we observed the process. So overall, we had a lot of data to keep this process transparent and prioritizing student voice in selecting the curriculum and teacher voice.
Thank you, Natalie. I'll take over from here. Hi, Mary Ellen. Good to see you.
Yes.
So to piggyback on what Danny said before about the data, we had tons of data. And when the data was first presented to us, we were given the data in 2 different buckets. We were presented with curriculum blue and curriculum yellow. We did not know which curriculum was which. So we were first given the data and we were told this is priority 1, this is curriculum blue, this is curriculum yellow. Vote on priority 1 just with the numbers in front of us. And we did that 3 times. And to be honest, we could not tell which curriculum was which. And we were sitting at our tables and we were trying to find our favorite because of course we walked into the consensus meeting knowing which favorite we had and which curriculum we were going to vote on. And it was hard to tell. So you really just had to vote with the numbers in front of you. And then after we had voted on the 3 priorities just with the numbers, the curtain was pulled back. And then the yellow and blue curriculums were revealed to us. We were told blue was either Study Sync or Odell, and yellow was either Study Sync or Odell. And then we were able to talk amongst our tables, and we discussed anecdotal experiences. We also discussed more of the survey data and the focus group data. And then we voted again. We voted again on the priority data, the 3 priorities. And we also discussed hesitations. Everybody was very honest about any shortcomings that the curriculums had and any hesitations and any concerns that we had. And we were able to ask questions, any concerns we had that would come up at the different levels. And then we voted again. And that was how we were able to come to the overall consensus and the selection consensus. So there were multiple rounds of voting before we did vote. And then ultimately at the high school level, we did vote with 100% certainty.
Wow. That's great.
So the middle school chose Study Sync and the high school level chose Odell.
And Meredith, do you want to talk a little bit about the consensus piece there around the scoring?
Yes. So essentially, the little pie charts that you see there, people get to sort of to rank. There's what we want is we want to build consensus so that everybody eventually moves to one or the other. And so this process allows us to do that. And so by the end of the consensus process, you can see for Study Sync, I think we're at, it says 74.1. I'm going to say 75%, 75%. We're in the strong bucket where everyone is in agreement that they're absolutely all for it. They can live with it, or this is not going to work. So they basically get to rate themselves in there. And through that process, we come to consensus. So essentially for the middle school, there was a little more variation in consensus, but we feel very good about this level of consensus because everybody has agreed to it. We very rarely do these and we don't reach a consensus because of the data informed nature of it. It's really hard to look at the data and say, oh goodness, this will be a terrible selection. But we do find that there is some variation in people's comfort levels with it. And we utilize that to bring people together around the decision. So at the high school, and I wasn't in both of these rooms, Danny, I don't know if you want to layer on some more nuance about the people's experience of it. But at the high school, as you can see here, everyone was in the high level of agreement. But we feel good about both because like I said, this is not a reflection of people in disagreement. It's about their comfort with their level of agreement.
Danny, I would like to hear if the high school got to 100% after the third vote. How did that go?
They did, actually. They were at consensus before we got to that last vote, but we did it anyway just to make sure.
Did it take 2 votes to get to full consensus?
So we were on the last phase of where they asked which one overall, based on what we saw for the priorities, which one would you choose? They were at 100% for Odell. And then we did the kind of level 1 through 4 ranking of how could you live with this. And at that point, everybody was at what was listed as a level 1 or a level 2, which was let's roll with it. So we were full, and it wasn't as a edge of a seat as the middle school round was, because the whole room of 40 people had been in agreement before we got to that last final vote. In the middle school, we still were at 100% consensus where everybody agreed that we could move forward. We did hear some of the hesitations that came out about what some of the thoughts were around what would strengthen it for our specific group of students and staff. And that will be information that we use as we move forward in planning ahead for what our units of study look like next year.
Danny, could you open the door a little bit for me to share what is in the curriculum, or is that something coming up later on in the presentation? So what kind of books?
Well, I mean, there's a really wide range of texts that are coming out of both curriculum, and I can let our coaches talk a little bit more about that, and they've experienced it, you know, on the ground level. So I'm going to let Tony do this part, but then maybe we can come back to that, the discussion around the books.
Terrific.
Get closer to the end.
Yes.
Okay, Tony.
I'll take us to this point now. So we wanted to highlight the unique perspectives that were gathered of the student voices on the selected materials for both the middle school and the high school. So this data that was referenced before was collected from focus group responses as well as the open-ended surveys for both StudySync and Odell. So to highlight some of those excerpts, one student from a focus group said that, as someone who is dyslexic, I really am so happy. It's been awesome. Other responses highlighted the fact that they enjoyed that we learned something that's going to affect us for our whole life, talking about the fact that this is real, applicable material that they're able to bring with them into the world. And lastly, one student from the middle school mentioned how they liked the poem, that they could emotionally engage with people, and that they were able to go into depth into the story and to analyze the text with a great level of ability there. In the high school, we found similar responses as well. A student from a focus group said that they didn't think they've thought about character analysis so much as they have with this current curriculum. And they said that they were getting to a deeper level of understanding and they liked that process so much. Another student reported that it's introduced them to a brand new world of academic vocabulary that they haven't been exposed to. And then in one of the open-ended responses, a student touched on the fact, and many other students as well, that they read books in this curriculum, in this particular unit, that they felt like they would have never thought about reading before. And it was interesting in the sense that it was captivating in an entirely different way. From the teacher perspective as well, we wanted to highlight some of the positive trends that we saw from StudySync and Odell from those weekly surveys. So the middle school teachers for StudySync mentioned collectively how they appreciated the ease of the use of materials to effectively co-teach with other teachers. They also mentioned that there was easy to access scaffolds and tools at their fingertips with StudySync, that the overall interface of StudySync
was user friendly and it was manageable reading passages that they were having the students go through. And then teachers also reported that students were being engaged and interested in the content more so than they've seen in other parts of the year. For the high school, some positive trends for Odell collected from those weekly surveys. Teachers reported that this current curriculum that they were piloting helped teachers assess student readiness. And so there was a lot of discussion about how it was easy for them to monitor progress and that there was this continuum to honors and AP aligned curriculum that they were seeing with Odell. There were the questions that benefited comprehension and again spiraled to support deeper analysis of text. And teachers overall reported that students were showing growth and confidence with the material and also higher engagements in class. And so the last bullet is important again to note as well that all the curriculum questions in Odell were aligned to state standards, and there was also alignment with advanced placement courses as well.
So can I ask a question on alignment, Tony?
Yep.
I'm interested in how this aligns with the IB curriculum in the middle school.
I'm gonna push that one over to Natalie.
I'm so glad you asked.
I'm here to ask.
It's been so fun, and I use that fun term as a nerd. Looking at the study curriculum and all that it has to offer with the lens of IB. So
Yes.
with IB, the big takeaways from a unit plan are going to be that statement of inquiry, your key concepts, your global concepts, and then the extended writing is there in the curriculum and the project-based learning. So what I've been able to start doing is looking at how each unit plan lends itself to the IB work that we're currently doing at Nathan Hale. And it's a very fluid, easy process. There are so many layers within the study sync curriculum for not only differentiation, supporting students that need extra help in their literacy, but also enrichment and taking things beyond the text outside of the classroom, providing service learning opportunities. We've been able to connect not only the learner profile traits, the approaches to learning for IB, but even seamlessly connecting it to Portrait of a Graduate taglines and trying to see how the critical thinker and the effective communicator, how that connects to the IB world as well.
I really like that you brought up Portrait of a Graduate because that actually can be a center point for all of us and developing what we're hoping to see in our students. And I see it aligning also. I mean, it's not really hard. It's just to be thoughtful about, this is how we're getting to critical thinking, even if we're using AI for something, just complex things, but being conscious of it and sharing that with the students so they're conscious of what they're trying to develop into.
Definitely.
Metacognition, right? Remember that?
And I'm going to bring us back to this slide, Mary Ellen, to kind of go back to your earlier question
Sure.
where you asked about the text, because one of the things that came up the most was around having texts that are relevant and contemporary at both our middle school and our high school group. And so every week they were asked specifically about the text that they were using and engaging with during the pilot as to whether or not they felt that it was meeting that demand. And I'm sure that, Meredith, we can probably send out the raw data from the blue yellow later so that they could see how those two were scoring within that level of analysis there too. But I'll also let our coaches kind of jump in here to talk about any of the texts that were either used during the pilot or that to be present for future planning purposes. So I'll let Caitlin or Tony take it from the high school lens first.
I think within both of the pilots, our students were exposed to a variety of rich texts. I think both Odell and StudySync gave teachers the opportunity to layer both fiction and nonfiction texts together. I know when our high school teachers were teaching Animal Farm, they were layering in poetry, songs, nonfiction articles. When our teachers at the high school level were using the study sync curriculum, they were reading scenes from plays. They were reading snippets from Edgar Allan Poe short stories. There was a very wide range of texts that the students were exposed to. They were reading new authors. They were reading authors from the traditional canon that we all were exposed to growing up. I know I've looked ahead because we're moving forward with Odell, hopefully. I know I've looked ahead and, you know, Romeo and Juliet is on there, but there's also Friday Night Lights. So there's a wonderful mix of authors, titles, texts. So the students will be exposed to a really great range of authors, titles, texts within both Study Sync and Odell. And they'll be reading core novels and fiction, nonfiction, poetry, short stories, everything we want our kids reading in a really well-rounded classroom.
I'm just thinking currently the Pulitzer Prize winner, you probably know this year, was James. And I'm wondering if Mark Twain is in any of the texts that were in the winning curriculum.
That's a good question. I mean, I've looked ahead at a lot. I don't know every title.
Just curious. And, you know, James, it's certainly an easy read, and it's, you know, current.
I can't speak to the fact that Mark Twain is definitely in the curriculum, but just to emphasize what Caitlin said, one of the great things about Odell that we saw with this current pilot was that balance of contemporary pieces layered in with more traditional canonical texts as well, and that there was such a range of different time periods and different voices that our students can really connect to or understand what other perspectives are in the world.
Wonderful.
Meredith, I'm going to kick this one back to you.
You bet. So, I'm still in the after excitement of the selection process, but there is more to do. This is but the beginning of a much longer rollout process, and we wanted to give you just a snapshot of what it will include. And the team has already been well underway working on this. I think one thing I can say, we work with a lot of districts on these types of things, and everyone on this team has been incredibly thoughtful and aligned on the necessity of a clear set of strategies that involve all the stakeholders. And so we're going to continue that through line as we get ready to launch here. Coming out of the surveys from the consensus meetings, teachers are excited to dive into the materials and want support, or asking for support and professional learning. And so that's one of our first orders of business. We have set the vision for excellent instruction, and we've been meeting with a cross sector of leaders across central office to start to develop the strategy for driving toward the vision, while also engaging principals, teachers, the coaches, really getting everyone's voice at the table about where is the starting point. We know there are certain things during early implementation that all school districts need to focus on, which is ensuring that there's a professional learning plan in place that's aligned to the vision of excellence. We have the systems and structures across the district aligned to support it, meaning that the schedule supports the implementation, that everyone has the materials that they need. There are some technical things that we need to set people up for success with, and we've already been working on those, and as we go here, but will become a big focus over the summer. And then we're going to be, this is as the phases go. We're going to be in phase 2 for a lot of next year. It is a process where we find that it's important to collect ongoing data and do progress monitoring. So you see at the bottom, it's incredibly important that we be looking at classroom practice, continuing to get feedback. If we did this process and then we sort of, you know, dropped off on the feedback and input process, that would be very jarring, because now we've brought together such a coalition of people that we want to keep that going. And so undergirding our implementation process will be a very strong progress monitoring plan, which includes talking to students, talking to teachers, observing classrooms, finding out what's really working well, what the sticky points are, and then being able to respond to those in the moment in a strategic way, so that we can continue to refine the implementation process as we go. So this is not, and this isn't completely linear. You know, things happen in the school year that may mean we have to go back a step, or there's new leadership in place and we need to do some customized professional learning to get that set of leaders on track. But because we have such a strong vision and direction and are developing such a strong strategy, we can use this process as sort of a North Star for where we're going and the steps to take, knowing that the data will tell us if we're on, off track, need to adjust. And so that's what we'll be working on in the upcoming months. It usually takes 1 to 3 years for the curriculum to become, you know, really embedded in the district. And so we always like to tell everyone that we engage with that this is a process, and that the orientation to learning that we've already set out and established will be critical as we hit the ground running with this in the fall. And that's where we are now. We've now shifted to the launch, implement, and monitor, assuming that this is a fully approved process, of course. But we will be communicating this selection to all stakeholders and getting that implementation plan together, the professional learning plan, and then those cycles of learning and feedback that we'll use in the upcoming year. I'm not sure who wants to talk about the next steps. Rob, is that a you?
Sure. I'll jump in for the next steps piece. So we have our recommendations from the process that we engaged in. And our hope is that the curriculum subcommittee will move it to the full board for next week. And then our hope is that we will hit the ground running next week at the end of the week, where we will have a kickoff meeting, because one of the pieces of feedback that we heard from many teachers was it's very difficult to come back after the summer, and that's the first time you get a chance to see the new curriculum resource. And so if we can give them access, allow them to see the different units and materials before they break for the summer, then we're ahead of the game. In the summer, we'll have curriculum writing that will be happening. And then we'll have professional learning when we start school in August, in October, and I'm going to even say in November as well. So really this idea of we've done this part of the work, and I think it's important to say that whatever curriculum resource you select, it's not a unicorn, but we know that what we've selected is high quality instructional materials, and it's going to help us really set the stage as we continue to build consistent practices for all of our students. Mary Ellen, any questions that you have for this amazing group of people that's joined us tonight?
Well, yes, I have a few questions, but I want to repeat what you just said, an amazing group of people. What I love is the enthusiasm. You not only have a terrific, I would have, as a teacher, loved to have been in such a thorough consensus building environment. We all came to decisions, but not quite as data driven and as skillful as what I've witnessed right here. So I bet that was a fun experience for teachers to feel truly like their voice is being heard. Can
I add a piece, Mary Ellen, that I don't know if you heard? The central office team they were not voting members. They were part of the process, but it really was in the hands of building leaders, coaches, teachers that were all part of this process. I think that that's important because
they really own the process. They were involved. Anyone who wanted to pilot had the opportunity to pilot. And I just think that really creating that level of investment has really helped us pay dividends. And I think that any of the coaches that have been part of this process can speak to that.
Would some of the coaches like to speak to that? Because I'd like to hear how the teachers may have reacted to this voice they had.
I can say at the middle school level, it was very interesting to be able to pilot both curriculum. We were able to weigh the pros and the cons of both. I had a teacher that at the get-go said absolutely no to Study Sync because he had experienced through a family member that had taught it, and then piloted EL and was able to shift his thinking after seeing what EL provided versus what he was then able to intervisit to another classroom. I had the 8th grade teachers seeing what the 6th grade teachers were doing, so they could see both piloting curriculum and engage and ask each other questions. So that was really exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. And then even teachers, we had teachers that were not piloting in the building, popping in and seeing both. And we were able to do some of that work across the district. Coaches were able to visit different schools and see. So even just our personal bias with how a certain teacher at our school might be working with the curriculum, they might not have certain capacity that a teacher at another school. So we were able to look at how different teachers adapted to each curriculum.
Cross-pollinating ideas.
Yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
At the high school, we had a similar experience as well.
Yes.
And almost every single person in the English department was a participant, whether they were piloting or went into an intervisitation, gave up their prep period, and were so engaged in the process. And we just kept hearing over and over again how thankful they were for the transparency of how much effort the district put forward and making sure that everyone's voices were heard. So that was really refreshing for all of them and for us to see how well this piloting experience actually was.
So the structure is what really helps for the buy-in. I mean, everybody has an idea, and you just want to share it. And then, as they were saying, the point was to come to consensus. I'm very, very pleased with what I'm looking at, and I'm thrilled that you are excited about it, because that just generates to children. There's nothing better than an excited teacher to spread an idea and to open a mind. So I think that this looks really, really good. I did have one more question about will teachers be able, if we have that June meeting, will they be able to take some of the materials home during the summer?
So all of the materials are available digitally. We spoke with Study Sync this afternoon, and they are going to keep access alive throughout the summer for all of our staff to be able to access the platform and the demo materials.
That is a good answer. Wow. You're right there.
We have found as many digital versions of text that we possibly can find so that they have access to those. And the same we will put forth with the Odell is already available online and open access for all staff right now. Throughout this whole process, every faculty member has had a demo account login to materials so that they could play with both versions of it and get feedback from their partners around how it has been living in their classrooms. But we will make sure that all of that stays up and alive for staff. They will get another round of introduction to that next week if we get past the June 3rd meeting. And then we will do our best to get as much into hands before everybody leaves for summer. Some beach reads.
Okay, well, I'll do my best to get the board on board with this. I also want to mention how impressed I am. I haven't seen it, but every group has said that there's going to be clear instruction on how to scaffold things and how to adjust and adapt to all the different students that are running through the systems. And I think that used to be given to the individual teacher to come up with zany and wonderful ways, but it's certainly nice to have just immediate access to, okay, I've got four kinds of students in my classroom. How am I going to approach each one? Here are 3 or 4 suggestions. Boom, got it for this particular lesson. I think that's wonderful that was one of the criteria for looking at a curriculum. So good. Every which way I'm looking, every report, everyone has the terrific attitude. Moving ahead. Rob, do you want to wrap this?
So that's our presentation. That is the end of everything. I think that I know that Mary Ellen, you are by yourself tonight, but in terms of moving this to the full committee, I do think you need to make a motion to the full board.
When we're together. I mean, when the board's together, is that what you're saying?
No, from the subcommittee.
So
the subcommittee usually moves it forward.
Exactly, but when I connect with the other board members, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sounds
yes,
good.
I can definitely do that. I can do that. Then they can, if they were unable to come, they'll be able to watch this.
So, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who joined this evening.
Thank you all, Tony, everybody, Matt, Natalie.
Thank you.
Caitlin, did I say that right? Danny. Thanks so much, Natalie. See you on the water.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.